The morning crowd at Miller's diner was light, just the usual retirees at the counter, and a pair of truckers leaning into their plates. The quiet veteran sat alone near the window, his jacket folded neatly over the chair, his hands steady as he lifted the chipped mug of coffee. The bell above the door jingled, and a young clerk from the hardware store walked in carrying the air of someone ready to be noticed. "Look at that," the clerk said, nodding toward the old coin the veteran had placed beside his mug to pay. "Nobody uses coins anymore. Might as well bring in Confederate money." Laughter rolled across the counter, thin and sharp. The veteran didn't move. He let the words settle like dust. His fingers closed gently around the coin, not to hide it, but as though remembering something that wasn't theirs to share. "You still hang on to that thing," the clerk pressed. "Guess the bank won't even take it." "I suppose it's worth what it's worth," the veteran replied evenly, his voice low, almost like a radio tuned to late-night weather. The trucker on the end chuckled. "Ain't much if you ask me." The youth bussing tables paused, glancing between them. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure whether to speak. The silence stretched, broken only by the rattle of ice in a glass. "Some folks just can't let go," the clerk added, smirking. The veteran set the mug down, eyes steady on the window, where the morning light cut a line across the linoleum. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He simply let the quiet do its work. "Guess he thinks it's treasure," someone whispered. The youth finally stepped closer, clearing plates. He slid a fresh glass of water onto the veteran's table, no words, just a nod. A small kindness unnoticed by most. The veteran returned the nod, the corners of his mouth tightening for just a breath. But the clerk's voice rose again. "You know, scrap metal's got more value. At least you can melt it." The laughter this time was thinner, less certain. The veteran's thumb traced the edge of the coin. The air in the diner seemed to pause, as if the old ceiling fan had slowed its spin. Then he said with calm finality, "Sometimes the weight of a thing isn't in dollars." The words settled heavier than any retort. A silence followed, broken only by the hum of the jukebox restarting its track. The youth looked down at the coin again, eyes catching a glint of worn engraving he didn't recognize. For a moment, the room felt different, as if something hidden had been revealed in plain sight. Still, the veteran only lifted his coffee again, his hand steady, his expression unreadable. The post office in town had the same rhythm every morning, folks lining up with bills, packages, and greetings passed along like currency. The veteran waited with the others, his presence quiet but steady. Jacket collar turned neatly, coin still in his pocket. The HOA official. Mr. Palmer stepped inside with a rustle of papers under his arm. He spotted the veteran and smiled in a way that wasn't friendly. "Well now," Palmer said, voice carrying just enough for others to hear. "Here to file another maintenance request. Guess even retired men need something to keep 'em busy." The veteran gave a slow nod. "Roof leak over at the hall. Needs patching before the rain sets in." Palmer tilted his head, the kind of gesture meant less for listening and more for performing. "Seems like you've made a habit of pointing out problems. Some might say you're keeping yourself relevant." The line shuffled forward, people pretending not to listen, but listening anyway. The youth from the diner yesterday stood near the counter, parcel in hand, watching closely. "It's the community hall," the veteran said evenly. "Leaks don't fix themselves." Palmer gave a short laugh. "I'll add it to the list, sure. But truth be told, budget priorities go toward folks still contributing, not hobbyists." The word hung there heavier than it should have been. The youth frowned, stepping closer. "Sir," he said to the veteran, "is that the same coin you had yesterday?" The veteran glanced down. The coin had slipped partly into view as he adjusted the papers in his hand. For a breath, the polished surface caught the morning sun. Yes, the veteran answered, tucking it away with a simple motion. What's it for? The youth asked, voice low. Before the veteran could reply, Palmer cut in. Souvenir, most likely. Scrap metal from a flea market. We all keep little trinkets. The veteran said nothing, letting the interruption pass. His thumb pressed gently against the coin in his pocket, the silent gesture steadier than any reply. You know, Palmer continued, not everyone who claimed service saw the places that mattered. Some posts were safe as Sunday pews. It's easy to exaggerate when nobody checks the record. The veteran's jaw tightened, but his tone never rose. Some jobs are quieter than others. Palmer smirked, leaning closer. Quiet doesn't build a resume. The youth shifted, unsettled. He looked again at the veteran, who simply straightened his papers and stepped to the counter. Roof leak, the veteran repeated to the clerk. North corner, water damage already setting in. The clerk caught between the exchange, nodded quickly, and stamped the form. We'll log it today. Palmer gave a final shrug, papers flapping like victory. Guess we'll see if anyone thinks it's urgent. The veteran didn't respond. He stepped outside the door, closing with a soft chime. On the sidewalk, the youth hurried after him, words catching before they formed. Sir, about the coin. Best to focus on your errands, the veteran said gently. His eyes were kind, but the conversation was closed. The boy hesitated, then nodded, parcel still in his hands. Inside, Palmer's words lingered, casting doubt in ears that wanted easy stories. But outside, the veteran walked on shoulders straight beneath the autumn light. The town hall bustled with folding chairs and the scrape of podium legs. A committee member waved the veteran toward the back row. Seats up front are for presenters, she explained briskly. He didn't argue, just eased into the wooden chair by the wall jacket, folded once across his lap. Meetings about budgets, not memories, someone muttered, shuffling papers. He kept his gaze steady on the flag in the corner, the light catching its fringe. His hand drifted into his pocket, where the coin rested, cool and familiar. Palmer, the HOA official, spotted him from across the room. Evening, he said, voice pitched loud enough. Still making requests. Careful, folks might think you're running the place. The veteran answered evenly. I'll leave the running to you. A few chuckles rippled. Palmer leaned on the podium, eyes scanning. Committees like these thrive on current experience. Not every resume holds weight anymore. The youth entered late, clutching a notebook, searching for a seat. He noticed the veteran alone in the back, slid in nearby. Sir, the youth whispered about the coin. May I see it? The veteran hesitated, then shifted slightly. For a brief moment, the edge of the coin caught the overhead light. Worn letters on its face showed more than age. The youth's eyes widened. Palmer called again. We'll begin with maintenance. Roof leak, north corner. Request logged. He tapped the papers. But priorities lean elsewhere. New lighting for the foyer, for example. Visible progress matters more than patching unseen corners. A hand rose in protest, but Palmer's gavel cut it down. Order. We'll decide later. The veteran's chest rose once, then fell. He leaned back, the chair creaking softly. On the porch outside, after the meeting adjourned, the night air was cooler. The youth found him sitting on the old swing chains, groaning as it swayed. You let him dismiss it again, the youth said, voice caught between anger and confusion. The veteran exhaled slowly, gaze on the street lamps. Not every fight is won by standing. But why hide what you earned? The youth pressed. His words hung in the quiet, sharper than Palmer's barbs. The veteran's thumb traced the coin once more, the inscription catching faint moonlight. He offered no answer, only silence carried on the porch swing's rhythm. Inside the hall, lights dimmed. Outside, the question lingered unresolved, heavier than any verdict. The town hall was filled past capacity chairs, squeezed close, the air heavy with the scent of coffee urns and polished wood. On the agenda was community funding, but beneath the lines of budget items ran an undercurrent of doubt and dismissal. Palmer stood confidently at the front, papers stacked like shields. "We can't allocate resources on sentiment," he declared. "We must prioritize visible improvements, lighting, signage, upgrades that people actually notice." A few heads nodded. Some looked uneasy. From the back, the veteran rose. His motion was quiet, yet it carried. The scrape of his chair drew eyes toward him. "I've asked for the roof to be patched," he said, voice steady. "Water damage doesn't wait for applause." Palmer smirked. "With all respect, you've offered requests, not proof. We need measurable justification, not old stories." The youth seated near the middle shifted forward, a notebook half open. He knew what was coming. The veteran reached into his pocket. His fingers closed around the coin worn smooth by years of touch. Slowly, deliberately, he placed it on the podium under the harsh fluorescent light. "This coin isn't money," he said, his voice calm but carrying. "It's a promise I kept." The room stilled. A silence fell heavy, as though even the ceiling fans had paused. Palmer scoffed lightly. "A trinket, nothing more." The youth rose from his chair. "Read it," he urged. His voice cracked, young but insistent. The coin's inscription caught the light initials, a date, a unit number, only a few recognized, but enough to change the air. A murmur rippled across the room. One of the older committee members leaned forward, his voice hushed. "That's not scrap, that's recognition." Palmer's color drained. Anyone can etch metal. The veteran did not boast, did not raise his tone. 7 years ago, 6 men came home from a place they weren't expected to leave. I carried this coin to remind me every day that promises matter more than applause. Gasps moved through the crowd. The youth stared, notebook forgotten. Palmer tried once more. "But there's no record. Records aren't always public," the veteran answered simply. "Some service is meant to stay quiet." Another silence, deeper than the first, pressed against the room. The weight of unspoken acknowledgement filled the space. The youth whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular. "Hide what you earned." The veteran turned his gaze toward him. "Because what matters isn't what's shown, it's what's carried." The committee sat wordless. Even those who had doubted now leaned back, the coin's presence undoing rehearsed objections. For the first time, Palmer faltered, his papers slipping in his hands. He had no retort ready, no dismissal sharp enough to cut through the truth that glimmered in the dim hall light. The veteran let the silence finish the work. He picked up the coin once more, not as a weapon, but as memory, as proof, as legacy pressed in metal. The roof repair was no longer in question. The church hall smelled faintly of wax and old hymnals, the wooden floor creaking as people settled into folding chairs. A potluck table leaned against the back wall, casseroles cooling under foil coffee cups half filled. Though it was just another town meeting on paper, everyone sensed this gathering was different. The veteran sat quietly near the side aisle. He did not seek attention, nor did he claim the podium. The coin, warm in his palm, rested like a steady heartbeat. Palmer cleared his throat, standing at the front, papers stacked tall. "We can't let sentiment drive budgets," he said, his voice firm but unsteady. "Our duty is visible progress, lighting upgrades, signage, things that show results." Some nodded. Others shifted uneasily. The youth notebook balanced on his knees scribbled quickly, glancing between Palmer and the veteran. From the back row, a choir member rose. "Visible doesn't always mean valuable," she said. Her tone was soft, but it traveled across the hall. A silence followed. The veteran spoke at last, voice calm, steady. "This place isn't just walls and rafters. It's where neighbors gather, where music fills corners. That deserves care." Palmer tried to smile, but his lips pressed tight. "Inspiration is fine, but inspiration doesn't pay contractors." The youth leaned forward. "Respect pays in ways budgets can't." His words cracked, yet carried. Chairs shifted. A woman near the front stood. "We know what he's carried all these years. That coin isn't scrap metal, it's proof." Her words struck harder than any gavel. Applause began with one pair of hands, then another, then many. The sound filled the hall in waves. Chairs scraped as more people stood row after row, until nearly the whole gathering was upright. The veteran bowed his head slightly. His thumb pressed the coin not in pride but quiet affirmation. He didn't move toward the podium, didn't claim authority. He let the moment belong to them. Palmer's face paled. His papers trembled slightly in his grip. He attempted to speak, but only managed, We need order." The gavel struck once, then faltered. The hall didn't quiet. The choir director lifted his hands, and a chord hummed low, reverent. It wasn't a song, just a single note, but it resonated deep in the wooden rafters. The applause faded into that chord, and then into a long, collective silence. The silent beat stretched. Heads bowed, shoulders eased, even the restless children hushed. Then suddenly, the silence broke, then applause erupted again, louder, richer, unanimous. It was no longer for one man. It was for what he represented. The youth whispered, eyes wide, "They finally see you." The veteran answered gently, "They see themselves. I just carried it here." The echo rolled on, not stopping for gavel or agenda. It was the sound of recognition after years of doubt. Palmer sank into his chair. His face lost its color, his hands gripping the edge of the table as though it alone could steady him. He had no more words. His authority crumbled under the weight of silence and applause. The coin gleamed once more in the veteran's hand, no longer hidden, no longer doubted. What had been private was now shared, turned into something larger than memory community honor. The evening air was cool, touched with the faint smell of pine and cut grass. The veteran sat on the porch swing, its chains groaning softly with every sway. Street lamps flickered on down the block, casting long golden lines across the quiet street. The youth approached slowly, notebook tucked under his arm. For once, he wasn't scribbling, just watching, waiting. "Mind if I sit?" the boy asked. The veteran gestured to the space beside him. "Plenty of room." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the creak of the swing, the hum of crickets. The coin lay hidden in the veteran's hand, edges warm from years of touch. The youth finally spoke. "They're planning a plaque at the town hall. Your name, your service. They said it should be permanent." The veteran shook his head gently. "Plaques fade. Wood rots. What lasts is what people carry forward." The boy leaned forward. "Then tell me how to carry it. Don't keep it secret anymore." The veteran studied him, the eagerness in his face, the way his hands tightened around the notebook. Then slowly he opened his palm. The coin gleamed faintly in the porch light. "This isn't money," he said, voice low, steady. "It was never about value. It was about a promise." The boy whispered, "The same promise you kept for them." The veteran nodded once. and promises. They don't belong to one man. They belong to everyone willing to bear them. He placed the coin into the boy's hand. The weight was small, yet the boy's eyes widened as though he'd been entrusted with something heavier than stone. The swing creaked again. The silence between them grew deep, almost sacred. The veteran exhaled, looking out toward the dark horizon. A promise kept becomes a light for others. The boy repeated the words softly, as if sealing them. A light for others. The replay line lingered in the evening air, carried on the faint wind that rustled the maple leaves. From across the street, neighbors emerged from the church meeting, still buzzing with talk of the plaque. They waved, some pausing to nod with respect. One called out, "We'll see it done right." The veteran lifted a hand in quiet acknowledgement. No speech, no grand gesture, just a steady nod. The boy turned the coin over and over in his palm. "How do I know I'll be worthy of it?" "You don't," the veteran said. His eyes softened. "You just keep the promise when it finds you." The boy nodded, tucking the coin carefully into his pocket. For the first time, the notebook stayed closed. The swing slowed. The veteran rose, his boots pressing against the old porch boards with familiar weight. He looked back once, watching the boy sit taller, hand resting over the pocket where the coin now rested. Down the block, the town hall lights glowed faintly. Soon there would be a plaque. Soon there would be names carved into wood and brass. But for tonight, the legacy had already been passed. The veteran stepped off the porch and walked into the quiet street, shoulders steady, stride unhurried. Dignity didn't need noise. It carried itself in silence. The crickets sang on. The porch swing swayed empty, still warm from where he had sat. They left the diner in silence, the flag outside snapping in the dawn breeze, while the mechanic's hand rested quietly on a coffee cup. The clerk scoffed, saying the old veteran's coin meant nothing, his words pressed like rules on a bulletin board. Still, the man's pocket carried more than spare change. When the token finally shone, neighbors would see it was no currency at all, but a kept promise. Quietly, the Admiral leaned in, whispering, "Welcome back." Quiet men leave echoes too.